Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here today. I believe you didn't just show up by accident, you were meant to be here. You see, I believe God puts the right words in front of us at the right time. And I believe this is your time. Today I want to talk to you about something that lives deep inside each and every one of us, the power to push yourself and make it happen. You may be facing challenges, you may feel tired, overlooked, like the dream is taking too long. But let me tell you, there's greatness inside you. There's a fire, a God-given strength, and sometimes all it takes is a little push. You weren't created to stay stuck. You weren't meant to live defeated. You were made to rise, to grow, to overcome, and yes, to make it happen. So get ready. I believe something powerful is about to shift in your life. Not tomorrow, not next year, today, right now. You have everything you need already inside you. That's not just a feel-good phrase, it's the truth. Too often in life, we look outside ourselves for permission, for approval, for resources, for the right time. We tell ourselves, when I have more money, then I'll start. Or once I get that opportunity, then I'll move forward. But what if I told you that everything God has placed in your heart, He's already equipped you to achieve? You are not lacking. You are not missing something. You are not waiting for something magical to drop out of the sky. No, you've already been chosen, already been anointed, already been set apart for a purpose. The gifts are already in you. The strength is already in you. The resilience, the creativity, the ideas, they've all been planted like seeds in the soil of your soul. And yes, sometimes it takes pressure, it takes adversity, it takes being pushed to discover what's been buried deep within. But just because it's hidden doesn't mean it's not there. See, when God created you, He didn't create you halfway. He didn't send you into this world empty-handed. He packed you with potential, wired you with greatness, and wrapped purpose all around your DNA. The problem is we get so caught up in what we don't have that we forget to use what we do have. We keep comparing our journey to someone else's, looking at their highlight reel and thinking, I could never do that. But you're not supposed to walk their path. You have your own lane, your own tools, your own grace. David didn't need Saul's armor to defeat Goliath. He didn't need the sword or the shield. He just needed the sling he already had and the faith he carried in his heart. You might be trying to borrow someone else's strategy, someone else's confidence, someone else's approval. But what you need isn't out there, it's in you. The question is, are you going to recognize it? And are you going to use it? So many people are walking around with dormant power. They've got dreams but no action. They've got talent but no belief. They've got passion but no push. And it's not because they're lazy. It's because somewhere along the way, life tried to convince them they weren't enough. That voice in their head keeps saying, you're not smart enough. You're not strong enough. You're not ready. But let me remind you, that voice is a lie. That's fear talking. That's insecurity trying to silence your calling. The truth is, if you weren't equipped for it, the dream wouldn't be in you. God doesn't place desires in your spirit without giving you the capacity to bring them to life. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It doesn't mean it's going to happen overnight. But when you start where you are with what you've got, you begin to unlock the treasure within. You don't need the applause. You don't need the crowd. All you need is a made-up mind and the willingness to move forward, even if it's just one small step at a time. Because it's in that movement, however slow, however simple, that momentum builds. And once you start pushing, something begins to shift. Doors begin to open. Strength begins to rise. The resources begin to appear. You're not waiting on a sign. You're not waiting on someone to come rescue you. That rescue is already living inside you. But like any gift, it has to be unwrapped. It has to be activated. It has to be used. Faith without works is dead. Potential without effort is just potential. Greatness without action never becomes greatness. You can pray for opportunity, but if you don't prepare for it, you'll miss it when it comes. And guess what? God responds to movement. He blesses those who take the first step. When you use what's in your hand, He multiplies it. You might be thinking, but I've made mistakes, I've missed chances, so what? Everybody has. Mistakes don't cancel purpose. Setbacks don't cancel destiny. Your past doesn't disqualify you from your future. In fact, it might just be the very thing that prepared you. That pain you went through, that disappointment, that delay. It wasn't to defeat you, it was to shape you, to develop something in you that ease never could, to reveal strengths you didn't know you had. You're still here, aren't you? That means you've got something worth fighting for. That means the fire hasn't gone out. That means your story isn't over. What you have right now, your experience, your voice, your values, your passion is more than enough to take the next step. You don't need 10 steps. You don't need to have the whole journey mapped out. You just need to trust that you've been divinely prepared for this moment. The way may not look clear. The outcome may not be guaranteed. But your inner supply, your courage, your faith, your determination is full. Everything you've gone through has been preparation. Every delay was development. Every no was a redirection. And now it's your time to rise. Your next level begins where your comfort zone ends. Growth doesn't happen when everything is easy, when the path is smooth, or when you're surrounded by certainty. Growth happens when you stretch, when you step into the unknown, when you say yes even though your knees are shaking. So many people stay stuck, not because they don't have potential, but because they're afraid to get uncomfortable. They settle for safe. They settle for familiar, but familiar doesn't mean fulfilling. Just because you've always done it that way doesn't mean it's the way to your destiny. We were not created to stay the same. We were created to evolve, to grow, to step into greater levels of purpose and calling. And those levels will never be found in the place where everything is predictable. The comfort zone may feel good, but it's not where miracles happen. It's not where breakthroughs take place. That's why sometimes life will push you. Sometimes God will allow certain situations to become so uncomfortable that you have no choice but to move. Not to punish you, but to prepare you. Because the next level of your life requires a new version of you. Not a different personality, not a different soul, but a version of you that's braver, bolder, and willing to step up and step out. You see, comfort is sneaky. It lulls us into routines. It tells us we're doing fine when deep down we know we were made for more. We keep waiting for a big sign, some thunderous voice from heaven to tell us it's time to go higher. But sometimes the only sign we need is that sense of restlessness in our spirit. That quiet nudge that says there's more in you than what you're living right now. You weren't created to play small. You weren't designed to just survive the week, pay the bills, and wait for retirement. There's a purpose on your life that will only be unlocked when you take a step outside what's easy and into what's possible. Think about every breakthrough you've had in life. It likely didn't come when everything was smooth. It came when you were stretched, when you took a risk, when you said yes even though fear was whispering no. That's where strength is developed. That's where faith is tested. That's where capacity increases. Because faith is not needed when you're in full control. Faith is needed when you don't know what's next. But you trust that the one who called you does. And that's what makes the next level possible, not the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward anyway. Many people think that if it's uncomfortable, it must be wrong. But in God's kingdom, discomfort is often the doorway to destiny. It's where you stop relying on your own strength and start depending on His. It's where your gifts are sharpened, your character is refined, and your heart is expanded. When you stay in your comfort zone too long, your vision starts to shrink. Your dreams start to dim. But when you dare to step out, everything starts to shift. New relationships appear. New opportunities open. New strength rises. You'll never find out how strong you really are until strong is your only option. You'll never know the fullness of your calling until you leave the shore and step into deeper water. And yes, it might feel scary. Yes, it might come with resistance. But remember, resistance builds muscle. Pressure produces diamonds. And fire refines gold. The next version of you isn't waiting inside the familiar, it's waiting on the other side of a risk you're afraid to take. The longer you stay comfortable, the more you delay the development that leads to your purpose. So many dreams go unfulfilled not because they weren't possible, but because the person holding them refused to get uncomfortable. They waited for fear to disappear, but fear doesn't leave first, obedience does. When you move in spite of the fear, you show God that you're ready. You show yourself that you're stronger than the excuses. You open the door for the extraordinary to enter your life. Greatness doesn't knock on the door of comfort. It knocks on the door of courage. And only those who answer are shaking, unsure, but willing get to see what's on the other side. You might not feel ready. You might not have all the answers, but you have what it takes to begin. You have the calling, you have the vision, and you have the same power that raised Christ from the dead living inside you. That power doesn't get activated when you stay where it's safe. It comes alive when you walk in faith, when you say, God, I don't know how, but I trust that you do. And step by step, day by day, you move closer to who you were always meant to be. Don't wait for perfect conditions, start with what you have. Too many people spend their whole lives waiting for the right time, the right people, the right finances, the right support, the right feeling. But here's the truth. There will never be a perfect time to begin. There will never be a moment where everything lines up exactly the way you imagined it. Life doesn't work like that. Faith doesn't work like that. If you keep waiting for all the lights to turn green before you leave the house, you'll never make it to your destination. At some point, you have to step out with what's in your hand and trust that more will come as you move. You don't need to have it all figured out to get started. You don't need all the answers. You don't need every tool. What you need is a made-up mind and a willing heart. God doesn't require perfection. He looks for obedience. And obedience means starting even when it's messy, even when it's uncertain, even when you feel unqualified. Look at the people who've done great things. They didn't start with greatness. They started with an idea, a burden, a passion, and the decision to act. That's what separates people who succeed from people who stay stuck, the willingness to begin, even in the middle of uncertainty. We often think we need something more before we can move forward. If I just had more money, more followers, more connections, then I'd be ready. But what if what you have right now is exactly what you need to take the next step? What if God is waiting on you to move before He releases the next resource? Sometimes the blessing doesn't show up until the step is taken. Sometimes the door doesn't open until you reach for the handle. If you don't start with what you have, you risk staying exactly where you are not because you're not capable, but because you refuse to activate your capability. It's easy to get stuck in preparation mode, always planning, always researching, always thinking about what you'll do someday. But someday is not a day of the week. Someday never comes unless you make it today. You could spend your whole life trying to prepare for a moment that's already in front of you. And while preparation is important, there comes a point where planning becomes procrastination. You convince yourself you're being wise, but really fear is disguising itself as caution. And fear will always have an excuse. Fear will always tell you it's not enough. But God didn't give you a spirit of fear. He gave you power, love, and a sound mind. Think about Moses standing at the Red Sea. God didn't say, wait until the sea parts, then step in. No, He said, lift what's in your hand. All Moses had was a staff. It didn't look like much. But when he used it in obedience, the water split. What if you're holding something that looks ordinary, but God wants to do something extraordinary with it? What if your voice, your story, your small start, your limited resources, what if those are the very things God wants to breathe on? But He can't bless what you're unwilling to move with. You don't need a spotlight to start. You don't need applause to take action. In fact, most great things begin in secret. They begin in silence. They begin in the unnoticed places where it's just you and your faith and a decision to keep showing up. People may not understand it. They may not support it. But if God has placed something in your heart, it's not there by accident. And the way to honor it is not to wait for perfection, it's to move with purpose. God can do more with your little than you can do with someone else's plenty. But He won't multiply what you don't offer. If you're waiting until everything looks right, you'll miss the power that comes from starting when it doesn't. Excellence is built, not handed over. Confidence is grown, not gifted. Clarity comes through motion, not waiting. That dream in your heart won't come to life by sitting on the sidelines hoping for a miracle. The miracle often is the motion. The blessing is in the action. And if you dare to start with what you have, even if it's just a few loaves and fish, God knows how to feed the multitude. He knows how to stretch it. But He's looking for someone willing to bring what they've got, however small, however simple, and say, this is what I have. I'll use it. Because that's when things begin to shift. That's when things begin to move. That's when doors you didn't even know existed begin to open. God didn't bring you this far to leave you halfway. When you look back over your life, think about everything you've already come through, the battles you didn't think you'd survive, the setbacks that should have taken you out, the closed doors that you now realize were divine protection. You didn't make it this far on your own. There was grace guiding you, strength holding you, favor going before you, even when you couldn't see it. And if He brought you through that, He's not going to leave you in this. God finishes what He starts. He's not in the business of abandoning His people. He's a faithful God, a promise-keeping God, a God who sees the end from the beginning and knows exactly how to begin, knows again even when you don't. Sometimes in life, the pressure gets intense. You start to wonder, did I really hear God? Am I even on the right path? If this was the right direction, why does it feel so hard? But the presence of difficulty doesn't mean the absence of purpose. Hard doesn't mean wrong. Challenge doesn't mean you're off course. In fact, sometimes the resistance is proof that you're exactly where you're supposed to be. The enemy doesn't fight what isn't a threat. And if you weren't carrying something powerful, there wouldn't be this much pressure pushing against you. When you're in the middle of a tough season, it's easy to forget how far you've come. It's easy to focus on what's missing, what's broken, what hasn't worked out. But don't let your current circumstances make you question what God already confirmed. Just because you don't see the full picture yet doesn't mean the promise isn't still in motion. The seed is still growing even when it's underground. The foundation is still being laid even when the walls haven't gone up. God is still working behind the scenes, arranging the right people, aligning the right timing, preparing you for what's next. You might feel like giving up. You might feel tired, stretched thin, worn out from trying to do the right thing and still not seeing the results. But don't confuse delay with denial. Don't let temporary silence make you think you've been forgotten. God hasn't brought you this far to watch you fall. He hasn't invested in you, strengthened you, delivered you from what should destroy you just to walk away now. He's not the kind of father who leads you into a desert and leaves you thirsty. He's the kind who makes rivers in the wilderness, the kind who shows up in the midnight hour, the kind who uses what was meant to harm you and turns it into the very thing that lifts you. When the Israelites were fleeing Egypt, they came up against the Red Sea. It looked like the end. Trapped between the water and Pharaoh's army, fear started to rise. But God didn't bring them out of slavery just to leave them stranded on a shoreline. No, He made a way where there was no way. That same God is with you. That same power is in you. If He could part the sea then, He can part your obstacles now. If He could bring water from a rock, He can bring provision in the middle of your drought. If He could raise the dead, He can revive the dreams you thought were gone. Sometimes it's not about understanding the plan, it's about trusting the one who made it. You might not see how it's all going to come together. You might not know where the next opportunity is coming from. But you can be confident in this: you are not alone. You are not abandoned. You are not forsaken. There is a purpose behind your pain, a lesson in your struggle, and a breakthrough on the other side of your obedience. What looks like a setback could actually be a setup. What feels like the end might just be the beginning of something greater than you imagined. God didn't bring you through storms, through heartbreak, through closed doors, just to leave you wondering why you started. He brought you this far so you could grow stronger, bolder, more dependent on Him, more refined in your character, and more prepared for the blessing that's coming. There are people who gave up at the edge of their breakthrough because they thought God was done. But He was just getting started, What He started in your life, He is faithful to complete. He's the author, but He's also the finisher. He's not done with you. This isn't the end of your story. It's just the middle of the chapter. The promise still stands. The vision is still alive. The best is still ahead. Speak victory even when you feel defeat. Life has a way of testing your faith, of pushing you into places where nothing looks like it's working out. You pray and it feels like the heavens are silent. You work hard and don't see the results. You show up with everything you've got and yet the door still doesn't open. That's when the enemy loves to whisper, you're done. It's over. You've missed your chance. But that's the moment where you have to decide what kind of story you're going to tell yourself. Are you going to echo defeat, or are you going to declare victory? Because your words are not just sounds, they are seeds. They go out into your future and begin shaping what comes next. God created the entire universe with words. He spoke and light appeared. He spoke and the sea separated. That same power is in your mouth. What you speak has the ability to shift atmospheres, to change your mindset, to stir up faith when fear is screaming loud. You may feel weak, you may feel like quitting, but don't let your feelings have the final say. Feelings are real, but they're not always right. Your words have to rise higher than your emotions. You've got to speak not what you see, but what you believe, not what you fear, but what you hope for. Not the reality around you, but the promise within you. It's easy to speak victory when everything is going your way. It's easy to be positive when the money's coming in, when the relationships are healthy, when the opportunities are flowing. But what about when it's quiet? What about when nothing looks promising? That's when speaking victory becomes powerful. That's when your words become weapons. When David faced Goliath, he didn't just bring a sling, he brought a declaration. He said, "This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands." He spoke his victory before it happened. He prophesied his win before the battle began. That's the kind of faith that moves mountains. You can't wait for everything to turn around before you start talking like it already has. That's not faith, that's confirmation. But faith calls things that are not as though they were. Faith says, I may be down, but I'm not done. I may be hurting, but I'm still standing. I may not see a way, but I know the waymaker. You may have cried last night, but today you can still declare joy is coming in the morning. You may have failed, but you can still say, this failure will not define me. God is not through with me yet. Your words set the tone for your life. They create the atmosphere you live in. If you're always talking about how hard it is, how tired you are, how nothing ever works out, don't be surprised when that becomes your reality. But if you start speaking life, speaking faith, speaking hope, you'll begin to see things shift. Not because your situation changed first, but because your spirit did. The shift always begins inside. That's where victory starts in your mindset, in your perspective, in your declaration. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do in the middle of chaos is simply say, God, I trust you. Not because you understand it all, but because you believe He's still in control. That's victory. When you choose peace over panic, when you choose praise over complaining, when you choose to lift your eyes instead of hanging your head, that's speaking victory. That's standing in faith. That's living in a way that heaven honors and hell fears. The truth is, the enemy wants your voice. He wants to silence your declarations because he knows the power they carry. He wants you to speak doubt, to confess weakness, to rehearse your worry. But your voice is not meant to echo fear. It's meant to declare freedom. Every time you speak victory, you're not just encouraging yourself, you're aligning with heaven. You're releasing power into your life. You're building a wall of truth that the enemy cannot tear down. Even Jesus, when He faced temptation in the wilderness, didn't stay silent. He spoke. He said, it is written. He didn't argue with the devil. He declared the word. And the word silenced every lie. You've got to speak like that. Speak what's written. Speak the promise, not the problem. Speak what God says, not what your circumstances say. When fear rises, say, God has not given me a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. When lack threatens, say, my God shall supply all my needs. When confusion hits, say, I have the mind of Christ. Because those words aren't just comfort, they're weapons, they're truth, they're power. They're how you win, even when you feel like you're losing. When you push in faith, heaven responds in power. There's something about a person who refuses to give up, who refuses to let go of what God has promised even when everything around them says otherwise. Faith is not passive. It's not just something you feel in your heart or think in your mind. It's something you live out with your actions. Faith takes the first step before the rest of the staircase is visible. It moves before it sees. It believes when there's no evidence. It keeps showing up, keeps praying, keeps building, keeps hoping, even when the results haven't arrived yet. And every time you push forward in faith, even if it's just an inch, all of heaven takes notice. God responds to movement. He honors motion. When you take a step, He takes a step. When you move in obedience, He releases provision. When you walk by faith and not by sight, you open the door for the supernatural to meet your natural. Faith is the currency of heaven. It's what draws the miraculous into the middle of the ordinary. It's not about perfection or having all the answers. It's about saying, God, I trust you enough to move, even if I'm afraid, even if I don't feel qualified, even if I don't know what happens next. So many people wait for power to come before they push, but the push is what activates the power. It's in the going that strength is revealed. It's in the stretching that favor is released. Think about the woman with the issue of blood. She didn't wait for Jesus to come to her. She pressed through the crowd. She reached out with what little strength she had. And in that moment of faith, power left Him and healed her. The power didn't come first, the push did. She didn't have a plan. She didn't have an invitation. She just had faith that if she could touch Him, everything would change. That's what faith looks like. It pushes when it's tired. It presses when it's discouraged. It moves when it would be easier to sit still. Faith is not a feeling. If you wait to feel like moving, you'll stay stuck. Feelings are fleeting. They shift with the weather, with circumstances, with mood. But faith is a decision. It's a daily choice to trust what God said over what you see. And when you choose to walk in that faith, you tap into a strength that is not your own. You tap into divine assistance, divine acceleration, divine favor. What should have taken years can happen in a moment when God's hand is on it. But He's looking for movement. He's looking for effort. He's looking for someone who will say, even if I don't feel it, I'm going to push anyway. There's power in the push. There's power in refusing to quit. Heaven doesn't respond to comfort zones, it responds to courage. God doesn't reward passivity, He rewards pursuit. When you seek, you find. When you knock, the door opens. When you ask, is given, not because you earn it, but because you believed enough to keep going. Your push may not look dramatic. It might just be showing up one more time. It might be making the call, sending the email, writing the first page, showing kindness when you feel empty. But every small act of obedience is seen. Every act of faith is multiplied. Every seed sown in trust will produce a harvest in time. The enemy wants to wear you down until you stop pushing. He wants to convince you that it's not working, that your faith isn't making a difference, that you should settle and stop believing for more. But he's not fighting you because you're weak. He's fighting you because you're close. Close to the breakthrough, close to the answer, close to the miracle. Your persistence is a threat. Your consistency is dangerous. And your faith is the key that unlocks what's been delayed. When you push in faith, it's not just about getting something from God. It's about becoming who He called you to be. Faith shapes you. It matures you. It stretches your capacity to carry what He wants to give you. Sometimes God withholds the promise until your character is ready to handle it. The push isn't just for the breakthrough, it's part of the preparation. Every struggle is shaping your story. Every delay is building your discipline. Every step of faith is strengthening your spiritual muscles. God sees every time you move when you don't feel like it. He sees every tear you cry behind closed doors. He sees every time you worship when it hurts. Every time you give when it costs. Every time you love when it's hard. And He's not ignoring it. He's not overlooking it. He's storing every sacrifice, every seed, every step. And at the right time, in the right way, heaven will respond not with just enough, but with more than enough. Not with barely making it, but with overflow. That's the kind of God He is. He honors the push. He honors the faith. And He responds with power.